evening, West Coast Berbice, East Berbice, quarantine and live on Facebook. Good evening and welcome once again to another program of Issues in the News, where we discuss the important events that would have taken place in our country. And as you know, Guyana is a very fluid and a very dynamic society, and therefore on any given day or within any given week, there are so many issues to discuss of national importance. I want to begin by, of course, reminding you that I have been charged, as you are aware, in relation to the law reports, and the facts must be well known to you by now. As we said from the beginning, this charge has nothing to do with missing law books. The law books have never been missing. I told the Attorney General when I demitted office, I explained to him the arrangement under which these books were acquired. They were always being purchased by me under a contract of supply, and the government of Guyana, upon my appointment, had agreed that they will continue to pay the subscriptions only for these books, and these books continue to be supplied under that new arrangement. And it is I who disclosed the details of this transaction to the Attorney General when I handed over to him after the 2015 elections. And then when I started to read in the press about law books being missing, I reminded him again about these law books and said that these law books are not missing. I have the law books. And I reminded him that I had explained to him the circumstances under which I have the law books. But at that time, he was pursuing a vendetta against the permanent secretary of the ministry. And in fact, he told me to stay out of the matter, that he needs to get rid of the permanent secretary. And he wanted to make the permanent secretary a victim of his wicked allegations. And I could not have tolerated an innocent person being made a fall guy, so to speak, for something that I instructed her to do pursuant to an arrangement which I had with the government upon my appointment. And that is how it unfolded. Of course, matters became worse when I started to expose the incompetence of the Attorney General and started to expose the failings and inadequacies of his stewardship in that office. And, one thing led to another, and I have been charged. Today was the case. I was charged since the 27th of April. Today was the case, and the special prosecutors, 5 of them, they are being paid $100 million. 5 of them turned up in court today to inform the court that they don't have statements, that the investigation is still continuing. Can you imagine? They have charged me upon no statement, upon no evidence, because you normally formulate a charge based upon statements which would have been taken from persons who have personal knowledge of the transaction and whom the prosecutor intends to call as witnesses at the trial. Apparently there are no such persons, and there are no such statements. It is the statement that gives you the basis upon which you charge. It is the statements that inform you about the facts of the case. And based upon the statements, you determine what offense you charge a person with and how you intend to prove that. All of that are materials that should be in the possession of the prosecution before they file the charge, so that when they file the charge, they are in a position to proceed with the prosecution. Today, the prosecutors informed the court that they don't have any statements and that the investigation is not even completed. And my question is, suppose you now, in continuing the investigation, you now unearth evidence that exculpates me. Are you now going to withdraw the charge which you have filed against me? No, they're not going to do that, because they will not be able to suffer the public embarrassment. And of course, the number of lawsuits that will follow when these charges are eventually dismissed. And it comes back to what we have been saying from the inception, that there is no basis for these investigations, and there are no basis for the investigations, and this particular charge has no basis in law, that it is all part of a political vendetta. It's all part of political witch hunting. They want to break my spirit. They want they have set on politics. Unfortunately, the law of this land is that you don't charge people on politics. You charge people on available evidence sufficient to constitute an offense recognizable by the laws of this country. They have not done that. So that is the first issue that I wanted to highlight. The second issue I want to deal with is the Carvel Duncan case. The facts of that matter is obviously in the open, and I'm sure most of you are now acquainted with what transpired. Just to recant a little, the Attorney General some time ago in open court behaved in a ridiculous manner, disrespected the judge and disrespected the administration of justice. As a result, the judge walked off the bench because he said to the judge that he can do what he wants, he can say what he wants, and anyone who tries to stop him, or rather the last person who tries to stop him, who tried to stop him, was a magistrate who is now dead. And as a result of that, the judge walked off the bench. I made that whole incident public because I was in the court. I am appearing for Carvel Duncan. The Attorney General, rather than accept that he was wrong and offer an apology to the court, started a most comical and foolish campaign of blaming me. I was sitting. I was not even speaking at the time. I was sitting. He was cross-examining a witness, and he said what he said to the judge. I was very far away from where that was taking place. Yet, he foolishly attempted to implicate me, as is his norm. You would see whenever he loses a case, he blames the Solicitor General, he blames the Deputy Solicitor General, he blames the judge, he blames everybody rather than accept his incompetence. And here it is again. You saw him attempting to blame me for cussing down and behaving like a lunatic in the court. Well, there was a whole exchange in the press which ensued, and I'm sure that you are all aware of it. And then the Prime Minister lent his hand to the plot by obviously conspiring with the Attorney General, because the judge said that he will not hear the Attorney General unless the Attorney General apologizes. And the judge was quite correct. Now, to avoid the Attorney General from apologizing, Nagamutu now enters the fray and joins in this way. I'm sure he thought was a brilliant plot. Got the Attorney General, got Nagamutu to agree to write a letter to the AG, because the AG representing Nagamutu. So the two of them, in a brilliant plot, decided that Nagamutu will write to the AG. Although they can pick up the phone and talk to each other, they are in the same government. But Nagamutu is to write to the AG to say, look, tell the judge that you can't hear the matter anymore because you, judge, you are biased. You are biased because you did not cite the Attorney General for contempt. Imagine the stupidity. Nagamutu is saying to Mr. Basil Williams, had the judge, to tell the judge that had he jailed Williams, he would not have been biased. But because he didn't jail Williams, he is biased against Nagamutu. I mean, these fellas like that, I don't know if they don't read back what they write, if they don't think aloud what they concoct. Because a small child will see how stupid and puerile such a plot is. That two lawyers, one is the Prime Minister of a country and one is the Attorney General of a country, the two of them sit down and come up with a letter which says that the judge must recuse himself because the judge is biased. And why is the judge biased? The judge is biased because the judge did not jail one of them. So had the judge jailed Basil Williams, the judge would not have been biased. But because the judge did not jail Basil Williams, the judge is biased. And that is the basis that they put forward. Unfortunately, the judge recused himself from the case. The judge reasoning, first of all, the judge recited what Basil Williams did in the courtroom and put to rest once and for all who caused him, the judge, to walk off the bench. The judge was very clear that it was Mr. Williams's disgraceful and contemptuous conduct that caused him to walk off the bench. Secondly, the judge said that Williams is guilty of contempt. Thirdly, the judge said that the fact that he walked off the bench and did not cite Williams for contempt at the time does not mean that he has lost the power to cite him for contempt. That because he didn't do it at the time does not mean that he cannot do it subsequently. And the judge proceeded to say that because the matter has become political, he is recusing himself. What that means is that Williams and Nagamutu have achieved their objective, which is quite unfortunate. And the impression that conveys to the ordinary man is that the judiciary is eventually buckling to executive and political pressure. When that happens in a country, there is a downward slide into anarchy, into authoritarianism, and into political dictatorship. It is not that we in Guyana are unfamiliar with this downward slide. Recall, we were there. Forbes Burnham, as Prime Minister, abolished the Privy Council because he wanted to control the Guyana judicial system. So one of the first things that he had to do was to abolish appeals to Her Majesty's Privy Council. That is a court that was in England, which was the highest court in the Guyana legal system. And Burnham recognized that if he was to rig the elections, stay in power, violate the Constitution, violate the rights and freedoms of the Guyanese people, and remain in government, then he must get rid of the Privy Council. And that is what he did. And when he did that, he took an iron grip of the judicial system. He controlled the entire structure. He ensured that judges were appointed only who were pliant to the administration. He imposed a policy of party paramountcy, whereby the flag of the PNC was flown in the compound of the Guyana Court of Appeal, the highest court at that time in our legal system. What that meant, and what that was intended to mean and to illustrate to the ordinary Guyanese was that, look, you can't go here and expect to get justice, because here is the Guyana Court of Appeal and here is the party flag flying in the Guyana Court of Appeal. A demonstration of party paramountcy. What party paramountcy meant? The party is paramount. The party is paramount to the government. The party is the most paramount entity in the state. The party overwhelms everything else. All the other institutions, be it the parliament, the judiciary, the police force, the army, everything is under the party. The party is above all. It is at the apex of the state structure. And that party was the PNC. And believe me when I tell you that the signals and the signs are all resurrecting themselves to show that we are heading in that identical direction. You see the delay taking place in the appointment of judges. You see the previous advice of the Judicial Service Commission being rejected by the President. And this current chairman being asked to review that advice. The Judicial Service Commission has no power to review its own advice to the President. The President has a power. If he doesn't agree with a particular advice, he can send it back to the JSC to reconsider it. And once the JSC reconsiders it and sends it back to the President must act upon it and appoint those persons who are the subject of that advice. Since last year, the Judicial Service Commission, since March last year, has tendered advice to the President, advising him to appoint 4 judges, 2 to the Court of Appeal and 2 to the High Court. And the President has publicly admitted that he has not acted upon that advice. And he has said that he has done so deliberately. Well, unfortunately for the President, the Constitution does not allow him to squat on the advice. He can't not act. The Constitution, the language of the article in question is couched in mandatory language and imposes mandatory obligations upon the president when he receives that advice. He is either to act, make the appointment, or he can send it back to the Judicial Service Commission for them to reconsider it. And once they have reconsidered it, if they substitute a new advice, then he has to act on that new advice. If they have not done so, if they reconsider it, and they send it back without changing it, then again he must act. But what the president has done in this instance was to wait for the Judicial Service Commission to change its composition. So you have a new set of members. Those are the games that you're playing. And those are why are you playing those games? Because you want judges that you are comfortable with. And that defeats the whole system. All the mechanisms that the Constitution creates to ensure that independent judges are appointed, or independent-minded persons are appointed. And the process of recruitment is one that is insulated from executive interference. The Constitution provides a whole series of mechanisms to ensure that the process through which judges are appointed, recruited, interviewed, and recommended for appointment to the president is one that is unpolluted by politics, protected against executive and other influences. And these games that the president is playing they break up all these mechanisms. And why? Why would a president want judges that he can control? Why? Because the president is governing using an authoritarian style where dissent and different views are not going to be tolerated. And that brings me to Parliament. We have 32 seats in the Parliament, and the government has 33 seats. As a singular political party, the PPP is the largest political party in this country. It took 5 political parties to come together after 24 years to beat us by 1 seat, if we are accepting that the election results are free and fair. We know that it is flawed, and that is why they don't want to bring up the petition. They want to put judges in place first. So they want to select their own umpires before the cricket match starts. What does that tell you? They have no confidence in the cricket match. They don't have any confidence in defending the elections because they are afraid that the irregularities and the fraud and the rigging tactics which they use will be ripped open before a court of competent jurisdiction that is impartial. So that is why you see all these machinations taking place to have certain people in positions. That aside, the Parliament is the place where, as a democracy, the Constitution says important issues must be discussed by the people's representative, elected representatives. In that Parliament, every parliamentarian there is an elected representative of the people of this country. When 65 members of Parliament sit in that assembly, we represent every single Guyanese citizen together. And that is why the Constitution says every important issue in the country must be discussed at that forum. Or else, if you deny a people the right to have their elected representatives represent them effectively, then what will for these discussions to take place? Unfortunately, we have a speaker who seemed to be in tandem with the government on almost every issue. And the result is that matters are taken off the agenda. Matters that we want to discuss, we are prohibited from discussing. Not matters that are of concern to us personally as MPs, but matters that you, the people, when you meet us or you speak publicly, you want us to discuss, because you have elected us to the Parliament to do just that. And when we attempt to have these discussions, the Speaker finds all manner of technical mechanism to prevent us from carrying out these discussions. And this has been going on from the beginning of the 11th Parliament. The standing orders are there to regulate the business of the Parliament. The standing orders are there to ensure that discussion takes place, not that discussion are prohibited. And this week, we were supposed to be discussing the VAT on education motion. We were supposed to be discussing the VAT on education motion. Now, the country is up in arms against the imposition of VAT on education. Private schools right across this country have expressed to us a request to have this debated in the National Assembly. They have sent petitions out, signed by thousands of Guyanese. They have sent letters to us. They have put letters in the newspapers. They have held protests. So we cannot decline. So we drafted a motion and we took it to the Parliament. Lo and behold, the Speaker threw it out, finding some spurious ground in the standing orders. And I have said that the standing orders were never intended to be interpreted in a manner to prohibit discussion. The standing orders must always be interpreted in a manner to further parliamentary democracy, not to curtail, stifle, and restrict it. And that is the kind of interpretation which is being placed upon the standing order to prevent us from discussing the people's business. Yesterday we had a motion on the floor to call upon the government to reverse the draconian increases of land rates and rents by the Mahika Maikoni Abari Development Authority, MMADA. And you should have heard the government. It is amazing. All we are saying, again, this is not our personal interests that we are advocating. This is what the rice farmers have met with us and told us are their problems. They have no market for their rice. The Prime Minister, Moses Dagamutu, while he was on the campaign trail, promised the rice farmers $9,000 a bag for paddy. And yesterday in the Parliament, in a most barefaced manner, he's asking us, to say who promised the farmers that. Can you believe these people? Can you believe this man standing there on the camera? And I'll get this speech and bring it to Berbice and ensure that the rice farmers of Region 5 and 6 hear this man. This man said he never promised rice farmers $9,000 a bag. He went all the way to Essequibo and he did it. And he did it in Berbice in Region 6 and he did it in Region 5. And today, he's saying he never did that. Never did that. And abusing us for accusing the government of making that promise. Accusing the government wrongfully. So, we had a debate yesterday and we said that look, the farmers are not getting price for the paddy. They're not getting markets for the paddy. You have imposed VAT on heavy duty equipment, agriculture equipment for the first time in the history of our country. We have weather challenges, climatic challenges that the rice farmers are facing. The rice industry, no one can second guess, has made a significant contribution to the economic advancement of Guyanese and Guyana. Rice contributes about 15% of our GDP, even when it is in problems. And the rice farmers at this point in time, they need assistance. We don't want the government to do what the American government does and subsidize farmers to the extent of 45% of their cost of production. We know that the government can't do that. But there are many things that the government can do, which the government should do to help an ailing industry that 100 or more thousand people depend upon for their sustenance and livelihood. What kind of government would, when the industry is in that state of sickness, when the patient is so ill, you take a 4-inch nail and a sledgehammer and you drive it in the patient's head? That is what the imposition of those rates will, that's the impact that it will have on the rice farmers of Region 5. MMA will not close down if they don't get this increase. But if you increase the rates in the manner contemplated, then the rice industry in Region 5 may very well die. So you can't tell us that you wanted this to maintain the land and to maintain the canals. Who are you maintaining it for when there will be no farmers to farm? And we said to the government that your own supporters are being affected. Because we spoke to the farmers of Seafield. We spoke to the farmers of Number 40 Village. We spoke to the farmers of Washington. We spoke to the farmers of Belladrum. We spoke to the farmers of Hopetown. They didn't vote for the PPP, I have no doubt. But they are damaged. And they will be damaged unless this government reverses the increase in rates. And that's all we are saying. How can you pay yourself 50% increase in salary? How can you charter Fly Jamaica to go to a party in Brooklyn to celebrate our 50th anniversary? How can you use $50 million to do an inauguration ceremony? How can you rent a bond to your friend, a house in Albistown, to your friend for $14 million a month to store drugs, but you can't give MMA the financial injection that it needs, so that MMA now has to be used as a brutal weapon against the farmers to extract from the blood and sweat of the farmers an increase that is draconian and that will drive the farming farmers into the ground. Why you can't do that to the farmers? That is all we were asking in that motion. And you should hear the speech of Moses Nagamotu. That the rice farmers are living in luxury and that they need to make sacrifices. That they are paying less than $1 per acre and that they should pay more. That is the man. He led the onslaught and accused us of putting the rice industry in the position that it is. But the rice farmers know the truth. When we took office in 1991, we took office in 92. In 1991, Guyana produced 90,000 tons of rice. In 2014, the last year that we were in office, Guyana produced 690,000 tons of rice. That is the reality. Nobody can quarrel with those statistics. What you have now is that 40% of the farmers who were on the land in 2014 are no longer on the land in 2017. Those are the statistics. That is the reality that they can't argue with. So they manufacture and they contrive argument. And of course, they have the majority. So they won the motion. So I want to say to the farmers of Region 5 that we captured your concerns in that motion. Dharam Kumar Siraj presented the motion. Yours truly spoke along with a number of comrades. Zulfikar Mustafa from Region 6, I remember. I went late into the parliament, so I can't remember all of those who spoke. But a number of people spoke, and they used their one-seat majority, and they voted the motion down. So unfortunately, they are going to impose that draconian increase on the rice farmers. We have done what we could have done in the parliament to stop it. But don't worry, we will continue to agitate. At this point in time, I will take some phone calls because we are running out of time. Caller, you're on the air. Caller, good evening. We missed that caller. Caller, you're on the air.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm calling from Kanji.
Kanji, how are you?
Fine. I'd like to say something.
Yes?
I don't know if you would accept it. I see government harassing all the members of parliament for the speech. But I have not heard anything about Ms. Carol Joseph and her fraud from Burma along with $7 million endowment review.
Okay, thank you for raising that.
Okay.
So we're not hearing about Carol Joseph and her drug addiction. She's not being charged. Mr. Christopher Jones, who is the National Sports Director, is implicated in a fraud which is being investigated by the police, but he's still on the job. And people in our government, as soon as they are suspected, they are sent on leave and they are blacklisted. But I may not be able to talk about the blacklisting. But here you have Christopher Jones, who is still on the job. And yesterday in the parliament, we asked about $605 million that were purchased, drugs that were purchased without tender. That was information we have. So we asked about the $605 million purchased by Valda Lawrence without going to public tender. Lo and behold, when the answer came back, it's over $2 billion of drugs that have been procured unlawfully. Over $2 billion. These people are detaining and locking up and charging people. If we are to apply their own standards to them, the entire government would be in the jail. The entire government would be in the jail. Because to begin with, their 50% increase in salary was a conspiracy among themselves to pay themselves that. They are charging people for things that are less than that. So caller, I'm happy that you made that call. Yes, you're on the air. Where? The Edward, yes. Uh-huh. $10,000, right? Yes, that you will pay them 25% increase. But caller, did you hear Nagamutu say that he will pay rice farmers $9,000 and $10,000 a bag for paddy? And the man is denying that he ever said so. Last night in the parliament, the man called upon the opposition to say who ever promised the rice farmers $9,000 a bag for paddy. Well, I'm glad that you have identified that, because on the next, I will try to get his speech to Bordeaux, so that if rice farmers of Region 5, to whom he peddled that blatant lie, and the rice farmers of Region 6, to whom he also lied about the price of paddy, will see the man in action. All right, caller? Thank you. You are, thank you very much. So, I'm inviting calls at this point in time on the program. We just have a few minutes more. Caller, you're on the air. Good night. Could you speak up, please? Yes, good night. I'm hearing you. Could you speak up a little? The viewers need to hear what you're saying. I don't know, madam. You'll have to ask him. You heard him say that? Oh, there was an advertisement. Okay, I'm happy that you said that. Well, Nagamutu said to the whole world last night that he never promised anybody, and the government never promised anybody $9,000 a bag for paddy, and that you, the people who are saying so, are a pack of liars. So the entire country is a pack of liars, according to Mr. Nagamutu. All right? So I'm happy that the people are coming out and can distinctly recall what he said. Caller, you're on the air. Hi, could you speak up a little, please? Where are you calling me from? Blackbush. What part? Miami Curie. That's the favorite part. All right, caller, thank you. Now, here again, the government continues to deny that there are drug shortages right across the length and breadth of this country. And wherever you go, people complain about the drug shortages. And when you tell the government in Georgetown, because they do not leave Georgetown, we have an urban-based city government. they don't come out of the city of Georgetown. Whenever they come into the countryside, it's only to visit their friends and relatives. And when you tell them anything, they don't believe it. They think that you are lying and you want to make political points. Caller, you're on the air.
Good night.
Good night.
I'm calling from Burma.
Burma. Wow, that's far.
Yes.
And you're seeing me till up there.
Right.
Very clearly?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Yes.
I'd like to say something about Ms. Carol.
Yes.
About the fraud at Burma is $2 million fraud. That she's been accused of because of the paper.
Yes, I saw that.
And she was accused of charged, or I don't say anything about it anymore.
And was this other guy who writes in the newspapers, what is his name? Abel Sitaram.
So,
Was he not implicated as well?
no, it was her, she was the chairman at the time.
No, but was he not? I know that she was implicated. But I read somewhere that he was also implicated.
I don't know, but I know he had some people with his mouth in it.
No, I know that as well. That was in the news too.
Today he's talking, speaking against other people. That is not good. He's in better.
All right, caller, thank you. The police, I want to appeal to the police who are conducting the investigations in relation to the Burma fraud. Please, the people want to know what is the status of the investigation or what is the outcome. Caller, you're on the air. Good night, good night. Where are you calling me from? Bad Settlement, hi, all right.
I would like to know how long is the monument here at the Mormon Redemption here? I see you construct the work and back again for another $92 million taxpayer money.
Well, you see, that is another thing. If that had happened under the PUP government,
Yes.
the Kaichor News would have carried a series that would have been running front page up to now. And, you know, I don't mind the Kaichor News exposing and so on. But how it is that the one story on this monument and that's it.
And the Excellency, the President, wouldn't put a word on that.
Not a word from the government. Not a word from the government. But if that had happened during the PPP government, Kaichor News would have been carrying a series of front page articles in which they would have asked comments from Tom, Dick, Harilal, and every other person who capable of speaking. But unfortunately for us, we don't have that kind of bulldog journalism on our side. And perhaps we should inculcate that. That's correct. And not a word of explanation to the people whose monies are being spent. Not a sensible explanation from anyone as to what is going on, how much the repair will cost, etc., etc. Thank you, caller. Thank you for highlighting that. I believe they are. I believe the international community is quite worried. No, they are doing, but it is our responsibility to continue to highlight it. Thank you. Thank you. All right, we'll take two quick callers, and then two quick calls, and then we will close off. Caller, you're on the air quickly. Hello? Well, we have lost that caller. One final caller, and this is where we have to say goodbye. The operator has signaled to me. Caller, you're on the air.
Hey, good night, Mr. Nara.
Good night. Where are you calling me from? Alice, yes.
I would like to, will you shed some light on this GCOM chairman thing for me?
All right, the GCOM chairman, thank you. And I'll close with that issue. We have submitted a second set of names to the President, the second set of 6 names, to His Excellency the President, and the President is requesting now their CVs, their resumes. That, I believe, has gone already. The 6 resumes have gone to the Office of the President. So we are now in the position of waiting for a verdict from the President, because, as you know, the Constitution says that the leader of the opposition must compile the 6 names and send it to the President, and it is the President who must find one of those names acceptable, or all 6 acceptable, depending upon your interpretation of the Constitution. But the eventual appointment of the chairman is the responsibility exclusively of the President of the Republic of Guyana. And this is where I have to say goodbye. We have had a good program. Good evening, and stay strong, stay firm until we meet again. And to my Facebook, viewers, it's the first time that we are really joining up for a full program. Please stand by every Tuesday evening from 7 to 8 when this program will be aired live, and you can join me live. So good evening, and see you until next week. Thank you.